The first question that we'll be answering today is, what is a normal pH? Normal pH is considered to be around 7.4, and you'll notice if you look right here, we have 7.4, and then we have this little plus or minus symbol right here, and then we've got 0.05 after the plus or minus symbol. So what that means is that there's actually a small range where we can still have pH slightly either above or slightly below that 7.4 value, and it's still considered okay. So normal pH range isn't exactly 7.4, it's really more like 7.35 to 7.45. When things get too far above normal pH or too far below normal pH, we have what's called either alkalosis or acidosis. So alkalosis is what we have when our pH is too high, and acidosis is what we have when our pH is too low. And the reason that we care about acidosis and alkalosis, or a pH that is either too low or too high, is that an abnormal pH can actually interfere with the body's ability to function normally. And an example of where we have essentially already introduced this concept is when we were talking about enzyme function. So way back at the beginning of the semester, we said that enzymes all have what we called an optimal pH, and when the pH of the blood or the tissue is in that optimal range, the enzymes function at their highest rate. If the pH gets too low, or if the pH gets too high, then enzyme activity is going to fall off. And so if enzyme activity starts to fall off or slow down, that's going to make it harder for the body to do what it is supposed to do. So if we're talking about the activity of bioenergetic enzymes, or the enzymes responsible for making ATP, if your pH gets too low, like it might do if you're doing prolonged high-intensity exercise, the enzymes that are responsible for making ATP will actually slow down ATP production, and that will lead to fatigue. You can also have an alteration in pH that might affect the enzymes responsible for, say, cross-bridge cycling. And so with these examples, you can see that not only is an abnormal pH going to affect somebody's regular everyday bodily functions, it can also have a pretty drastic effect on performance. So it's important for people to keep their pH in that normal range as best they can. That leads us to question 2 for the chapter. What is acidosis and what causes it? Acidosis is what we would say somebody has if their blood pH is less than 7.35, or anything below that normal range that we talked about on the previous slide. Acidosis can be caused by a number of things, but what these things tend to do is they will cause either an accumulation of acids in the body or a loss of bases in the body. Either of these two things can cause an increase in the concentration of hydrogen ions. And anytime you build up the concentration of hydrogen ions in the body, that is going to lead to a decrease in pH. Once that pH gets below 7.35, we have what we call acidosis. For question 3, we're looking at kind of the other end of the spectrum in terms of pH. So what is alkalosis and what causes it? Alkalosis is a blood pH that is greater than 7.45, so above the normal range that we talked about at the beginning of this chapter. Alkalosis can be caused by a number of different things. These things tend to be things that lead to either a loss of acids or an accumulation of bases. Either of these two categories will cause a decrease in the concentration of hydrogen ions in the tissue or the blood. And when you decrease hydrogen ions, that causes an increase in pH. So once that increase in pH gets past that 7.45 cutoff for normal, we are in what we call a state of alkalosis.